Hi, today I want to talk to you about Anselm of Canterbury and his views on the nature of the Trinity. There are two separate positions that he develops in two separate works. In the earlier work, the Monologion, he has one sort of stance, and then it gets elaborated, for reasons we'll see, in a later work called On the Incarnation of the Word. For the moment, I want to talk just about the Monologian position. Anselm himself is a remarkable figure. He's really the greatest philosopher since Augustine, and so for a 500-year span, philosophy managed to survive in monasteries and a variety of other places, but really was not able to thrive because of, well, all of the social conditions that led to what we know as the Dark Ages. There are a number of different explanations of that, including restricted travel, restricted availability of paper, and so on. Nevertheless, Anselm managed to get an excellent education. He was born in Italy, but traveled to the monastery at Bec in France and studied there, eventually becoming Archbishop of Canterbury. That transition, Italy to France to England, is maybe less remarkable in that time than it might seem today, simply because the standard language of all intellectual and theological discourse throughout the Middle Ages was Latin. And so Italians did have a bit of an advantage in that Italian is close to Latin, and the Italian of that era even closer to Latin than contemporary Italian. But still, it was something that enabled people to travel from university to university, monastery to monastery, and so on, regardless of country, and be able to deal with everybody because everybody in those environments spoke Latin. Well, let's talk about the position that he develops in the Monologion. Anselm begins with an argument I discussed separately for God's existence, for the existence of what he refers to as the Supreme Spirit. But then he gives us an argument that at first glance is rather hard to understand, and I think it's worth going through in detail because we see how he's thinking about the nature of the Trinity itself, and in particular, the relationship between the Father and the Son. Now, at first glance, the argument sounds very hard to follow. It goes like this. The Spirit has created nothing other than what is created through itself. Whatever's been created through the Spirit has been created through its verbalization. Therefore, its verbalization is what it is. Well, at first glance, you might think, I don't know what's being said here. But let's examine the structure of the Monologian argument from the start. The argument is from section 29 of the Monologion, and it's phrased, as you can tell, in a way that includes a number of negatives. I found that an easy way to make a simple argument sound complicated is throw in a bunch of negatives and unlesses and so on. And so the best thing to do is clean it up and get rid of those, understanding the general logical form. So let's do that. Here's how the argument goes. Now, what follows from those two premises? Everything the Supreme Spirit has created, it's created through itself, and whatever the Spirit created, it created through its verbalization. Well, we might think what follows is that if the Supreme Spirit has created something, it created that thing through itself and its verbalization. But now we need to think about what it means to create something by yourself or through yourself. Suppose someone says, I did it by myself. They're saying that they did it alone without anyone else. So it would be very strange to say, I did it by myself. Oh yeah, and I did it with Bob. Like, no, wait a minute, unless I'm Bob, of course. And so that's the idea. If the Supreme Spirit created anything, it created through itself, and also through its verbalization. Now, through itself, meaning through itself alone, all by itself, but it also went through the verbalization. It must be that verbalization. So, the conclusion is, the Spirit is its verbalization. Now, the idea behind this argument is that the Supreme Spirit is the Father. And then the verbalization, the Word, is the Son. Anselm is clearly thinking about the beginning of John's Gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It was through the Word that everything that was made was made. Now, I think that is the key behind what he's contemplating here. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So he's trying to say, in the beginning with the Father was the Word. Everything that was created through the Supreme Spirit by itself, and also created through its Word. It follows that the Supreme Spirit and the Word must be the same. Well, we get then the unity part of the concept of the Trinity. We want to say there is one God in three persons. And indeed, Anselm accepts that formulation he borrows from Tertullian. But once we think about that, we think, well, so far I see the one, but where's the three? I get the unity part. The Father and the Word must be identical. But aren't I in danger then of losing the three parts of the Trinity? I might be falling into a monarchian position, a sort of Sabellianism that says, well, really it's just one thing, and then we call it different names. So to avoid that, we need to think carefully about what's going on here. And Anselm, as we'll see, grapples with that and tries to come up with an explanation. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It was through him that everything that was made, and without him nothing was made. That idea, that concept of God and the Word being, yes, in some sense separable, the Word was with God, but also the Word was God. We get the distinctness, but also the unity. And so I think that is the unity part that we've gotten out of the argument. The Supreme Spirit and its verbalization must be the same thing. In other words, the Word was with God, but the Word was God. And so now let's take a look at another argument a little later in the text for the same conclusion. Let's run through it bit by bit. Everything that exists is the Spirit and its creation. So here we have basically God and creation. And those are the only things that exist. Now, everything created was created through the Word. The Word can't have been created through itself. Why? Because anything that creates anything else has to be prior to it in time. I have to exist in order to create something. And so the Word can't have been created all by itself. That means it would have to be later than itself or earlier than itself, and that's impossible. So the Word is not something created. In other words, the Word is not down here. But everything that exists is either part of creation or it is God. So the Word has to be God. But of course the Word was with God. We've distinguished the Spirit from not only its creation, but from its verbalization, from the Word. So there is distinctness implicit in this argument, but also in the end it's an argument for unity. Well, let's then think about how to reconcile the unity and the distinctness part. How can we understand the distinctness of Father and Son? God the Creator, and then the Word. Now that's a difficult question, and before we even try to settle it, we need to think, okay, we have one God, but then two what? We have the Spirit and its verbalization, as it were, God and the Word. There is a distinctness there, and so if we think about the persons of the Trinity, we think of the creating Spirit, or the Father, the Word, the Son, and then eventually the Holy Spirit, but we also then think, well, okay, we have one God, but three whats exactly? How do we characterize that distinction between the Supreme Spirit and its verbalization? Now, there are a variety of ways of trying to fill that in, and we've reviewed some of those in Greek philosophy and the difficulties one gets into in trying to understand what to plug in to that formula, one God in three whats. Well, Tertullian, remember, simply said persons. He, in effect, took a term from Latin and put it in there in a technical usage, saying it does not fit any pre-existing metaphysical category, so don't try to assimilate it to one. Instead, it's something new, it's something special, it's something unique to God. And that is precisely what Anselm thinks too. He says, in the end, it is really ineffable. So we can say one God in three, and then question mark, really. That's all we can say, because we cannot articulate what that category is. We have one God in three persons. What's a person in this sense? We can't explain that. It is beyond language. It is beyond our understanding. So we really do not have the linguistic or the conceptual resources to characterize the distinction between the persons. The Word must be the Supreme Spirit, and yet we don't actually treat them as simply identical as two names for exactly the same thing. There is a distinction to be drawn. It's not that the Supreme Spirit creates its verbalization, it instead begets it. There is a more intimate, a different kind of relationship. But still there's a relationship between distinct things. Distinct what's exactly? That's precisely what we cannot say. And so Anselm gives us something of a Mysterian account here, saying that we really cannot articulate this, we can't explain it. We have one God in three persons. If you ask me what a person is, I have to say it is beyond our understanding. We can't really explain it. We know there is a distinction. We have to distinguish God from the Word. After all, the Word was with God. It would be bizarre to say, I am with myself. And so it's got to be the case that there is some distinction to be drawn, and yet the Word was God. We also have unity. But Anselm doesn't stop there. In section 44, he begins to talk about essences. And he ends up saying that Father and Son have the same essence. In fact, each, he says, is the essence of the other. The Father is the essence of the Son, and the Son is the essence of the Father. Now, it is common for people by this time to think of the persons of God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, as alike in essence, as homoousios, to borrow the term that Athanasius uses and that appears in the Nicene Creed. And so they are of the same substance, consubstantial. They have the same essence. But now, what exactly do we mean by that? Well, to say the essence of the Father is the essence of the Son, that's something that has been commonplace ever since the Nicene Creed and the Council of Nicaea in 325. But when Anselm is writing the Monologion, he says something more surprising. The claim that the Father is the essence of the Son and that the Son is the essence of the Father is not something that you can just take right out of the Nicene Creed. That seems to be a different claim, and at first a little bit of a jarring claim. So let's try to understand how he's looking at it. There is an interesting sort of puzzle here, and so let's figure it out. He wants to claim that the Son is the essence of the Father, and the Father is the essence of the Son. Now it's going to follow from that, simply by substitution of identicals, that we can say, well, if the Father is the essence of the Son and the Son is the essence of the Father, then the Father is the essence of the Father, for example. Okay, now the same thing will be true of the Son. The Son is the essence of the Son. Now, it's a little awkward to talk about essences having essences. What on earth does that mean? If the essence is what it is to be something, then what is it to be what it is to be something? Now, let's simplify and just assume for a moment a principle that is not in Anselm, but since I don't quite know what to do with that, let's just assume that the essence of X is just the essence of X. Okay? Let's assume that what it is to be something is really just what it is to be that thing. Now, I'm not sure that's fair or that's right. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But in any case, suppose that for now to simplify what we're doing. If we do grant that, then we derive the following. The Father is the essence of the Father. The Son is the essence of the Son. But now, the essence of the Father is the Son, and the essence of the Son is the Father. So we can derive a startling conclusion. Father is the Son. After all, the Father is the essence of the Father. The Son is the essence of the Father, so the Father must be the Son. This once again gives us unity. We end up identifying Father and Son, and a similar argument could be constructed for the Holy Spirit. Presumably he would want to say also that the Holy Spirit is the essence of the Father and the Father is the essence of the Holy Spirit. And so we would get the conclusion that all of these are identical. But how can that be? We get unity, yes, one God, but it looks like we lose distinctness. Why don't we fall back into Sabellianism, into a monarchian position, which is going to be heretical in the end? We need somehow to preserve distinctness. So how can we do it? Within the Monologion itself, Anselm doesn't really give us a solution to this problem and explain here how precisely to understand any sense in which the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit are distinct. We'll have to wait for On the Incarnation of the Word for that. He does, however, give us an interesting model of the Trinity, one that is meant to illustrate just what's going on. So next time I will talk about Anselm's Monologian model of the Trinity and try to see how, following Augustine, he is trying to understand the relationship between the persons of the Trinity, how we can have one God and yet distinct Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So stay tuned.